Yeah, so as you can see, we have full access coming October 20th, 23rd. We're pretty excited about this. This is sort of taking place in lieu of Pause on Error this year. It's a unconference by developers for developers. The agenda is set pretty much by the attendees, those who want to speak and those who want to participate. We already have over 20 sessions lined up, and we were projected to have over 40 when we're done. It is being held in the Silicon Valley area at a Jesuit retreat center. So while we are near a metropolitan hub, we are very isolated with lots of walking trails and great opportunities to connect up, small, intimate settings. We have it's a great venue, and the price is right for this. Don't want to act like a salesman, but we have a room and board and the entire conference and all meals for under $1,000, which I think is a pretty great value compared to other venues of its type. And once again, we feel that this is a place to go to renew and make friends and connect. We have a number of rooms. We have singles, doubles, and also we have commuter rates if you don't want a room. But the singles rooms are starting to fill up. So if you want a room to yourself, uh, you should probably register sooner than later at this point in time. Uh, so we've got some great sessions. One of the sessions is being put on by Ron, who is here with us today, and it has to do with FileMaker and WordPress integration. And so what Ron is going to do is sort of touch a lot of the bases. He's going to go in much more depth actually at full access. But that's pretty much what I have to say about that. And I look forward to seeing everybody who signs up. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out and visit our website at fullaccess.us.
My name is Ron Glenn Cates of RGC Data, and first want to caveat this presentation with the uh, understanding that it is in no way a polished presentation at all. We've been hard at work with this integration with full access, and what I've been doing has kind of been a development in progress with this WordPress plugin that I'm using and that I built to integrate with the FileMaker Data API and WordPress. So I've not had the time to, do a PowerPoint and come up with a polished presentation. I'm hoping to have that all done by October when I present at the Full Access Conference. So this is kind of a sneak peek or just a kind of a casual conversation about what we're doing, just to kind of give you guys a little bit of a look at what we're doing with WordPress and FileMaker. I guess I'll start it off by, the history of this integration comes from, the question comes up like, why WordPress? And for me, the answer to that is that all of my clients use WordPress. The integrations that I've been asked to do in the past several years have always ended up being small to medium businesses. And by the time they bring me on, they've already got an existing WordPress website. So it just was something that in my use case, I have been running into for a few years now. And I've been trying all kinds of different ways to figure out how to integrate with WordPress. And I've tried things like webhooks with, third-party plugins like WooCommerce. I ended up doing a couple of different situations with Conference and also a little bit of a plug. I'm the facilitator and host for the Kentuckiana Developers Group that happens every month, the fourth Tuesday of every month. And a few years ago, when I took over as the host of that group, um, honestly, our system that we had in place was really antiquated. And so I decided to build a new website and a new system for managing that group. And so all of that came about to kind of just keep bringing up scenarios where I would run into situations where I was kind of hodgepodging the integrations with WordPress and everything was always falling short of what I wanted to be able to do. And over the years, it's been kind of a learning curve. I'd say 5 years ago, I was just beginning to ask the question, like, I want to integrate with the web, but how do I do it? And the data API came up, and I watched a lot of presentations and videos about how to integrate with the data API and all that kind of stuff. So it's really been a journey these last few years of getting up to speed and up to par with, being able to do these integrations. So um, one of the first things that I learned about integrating with the web and the data API is that you really need to have a PHP class, um, which handles the token management and the functions for integrating with the data API. So if anybody's not aware, when you're using the data API, make a connection to FileMaker, it issues a token, and you're able to reuse that token to reuse that connection each time that you query the database or do any kind of interaction with the database. If you're not using that token and you're not maintaining an open connection, then what happens is every time you refresh the page, for instance, you would be establishing a new connection to FileMaker. And there's actually a bit of a lag and a bit of a performance hit every time you establish that connection. But once you've established the connection and use the token management to continue to reuse that connection, then you mitigate that performance hit. So, so I learned how to use an FM a PHP class. The first one I did was FMPDA, and then that got stopped getting supported some years ago, and so I not too long ago ended up finding FM Restore from 24U, and that is a great PHP class for integrating with the data API. But like all of the PHP classes that I've found for integration, not designed specifically for WordPress. And there kind of are a lot of different ways that WordPress demands certain standards and certain ways of doing things that, although FM Restore worked, I could literally go up and upload it to my WordPress website. And then I could, write some custom code, which I ended up having to do using like a third-party snippet plugin. And I could get it to work, but there were, some of the things that came up with that is that, in that setup, how was I to handle the credentials? How was I, because in a WordPress environment, using environmental variables is very prohibitive. As a matter of fact, I never did figure out how to, institute and use environmental variables within a WordPress environment. And the last thing you want to do is hard code the credentials into the PHP coding itself. So things like that came about to where I just started to realize that I needed something a little bit more tailor-made for WordPress. And so, modeled after FM Restore, I developed a class for FileMaker that is specifically designed for WordPress. So let me do. So the plugin is basically completely built on FM CWP, which is the FM class that sets up a group of functions that are specifically designed to interact with WordPress and FileMaker. So, it's built and tailored to work in a WordPress environment using all of the WordPress standards and security standards and things like that to be able to work within WordPress. And then what I did is I folded that into a plugin. So when you load the plugin is CWP Snippets, and CWP stands for Custom Web Publishing. So essentially what this plugin is it's a snippet plugin. Like any other snippet plugin, it provides an environment where I can go in and I can add my own custom coding and have it injected through the use of a shortcode into WordPress pages. But what CWP Snippets does is it comes preloaded with FMCWP so that you can, so that the functions and that class is already loaded into WordPress and available so that you can use them within the PHP code snippets. One of the things that solved is that when I set up to use this plugin, I have a place to put my database credentials. So I can put my host name, the database, the default layout, username, and password. And like any other WordPress plugin, it securely stores those credentials and makes them accessible. And then it's also set up with a full demo package of the ability to set up a demo server or a development server, if you will, and set up like a demo database and do all those things. And it actually comes prepackaged with a demo database, which is simply just a modified version of the contacts template that ships with FileMaker. So it can be downloaded from here, and it comes with the credentials and all that. So one of the things that I wanted to make this plugin focused on was creating a learning environment. So the plugin actually comes prepackaged with a set of templates. And the templates essentially show you exactly how to use all of the functions that are wrapped in the PHP class, FMCWP. So for each function, there's a template that you can open up. And for instance, if we look at something like get database names, we can actually see how that function is used and how you pull your credentials and your settings and how you call that function to hit the database. And from here, you can actually do a preview. And what this is doing is hitting that demo database, and it's pulling up a PHP array response from that database. And then from there, you can go ahead and do your custom coding to be able to manipulate and present that in any way you'd like to. So real quickly, this is the demo database. It's, like I said, just simply a modified version of the contacts template. And this is where the demo database is being hit and where these functions are being calling to. So the whole idea is that you've got templates to work from, and it's an environment that gives you the ability to kind of play around and see what the response looks like, and gives you an environment to be able to, learn how to do some of the coding. Now, there's good news and bad news. The bad news first is that this plugin is not like an all-inclusive drag and drop, click a few buttons and bingo, you have a layout that pulls in your FileMaker data. I found that that's kind of an impossible task to accomplish because we all build custom databases with different tables, different fields, different relationships, and trying to build a one-size-fits-all just wasn't going to cut it, because every application that I've used and needed an integration for is a little bit different. I've got several different databases that are being pulled from, and every use case is different. And so I found that my preference is to be able to have a custom web coding environment so I can, kind of take all of the worry about connecting to the database and managing that connection. And then I could focus on actually coding the response and into, displaying what I want to display or being able to accomplish what I want to accomplish. So something else that the plugin ships with is some samples. And this is, again, hitting that sample database. If I go to preview, I can see an example of how we can use the PHP to format and display a list of the records from that sample database. And then I can view each one by detail. And please pay no attention to the styling. This is actually, I'm showing this from our staging environment for full access, and we've been doing some work on the styling. So the buttons with the red border and the green text is kind of a result of that. But and then from here we can even go to edit this record. And it even has the ability to do editing in portals so that you can have multiple phone numbers and addresses, just like it does, essentially, simulating and providing an access to the structure of the demo database so that you can interact with it almost entirely in the same way that you would in the database itself. So that's all part of the snippet plugin. And I do have a couple of other caveats. As I said, this is a in development currently in the CWP Snippets website. There is a download version available, but it is not the current version because the current version is being developed still. And one of the things that if you do want to download it and play with the version that's available for download, function scripts and styles are not yet available in that download. Honestly, because in the development of this, it's actually going to be, there's going to be a pro version that will be licensed per site. You'll have the free version and then the pro version, and the pro version would include access to function styles and scripts. So again, it's all kind of still in development. So that just kind of lays the groundwork for the tool that I developed for the integrations. And now we can kind of show how we're using that in a couple of use cases. So again, I wanted to kind of start by a little bit of a plug for the Kentuckiana Developers Group. And when I developed this website is using the CWP Snippets plugin to pull in everything from the next event, the schedule, a list of upcoming events, an archive of previous presentations that have been recorded, and there's actually an archive search and an archive page. All of that is being pulled right from a FileMaker database that's designed to manage the Kentuckiana FileMaker developer group. So essentially everything you see on this page, aside from the header and the footer, is being pulled in directly from FileMaker, and it's being formatted and styled through the CWP Snippets plugin. So, and I'm showing that essentially to kind of lead into the fact that the whole reason that I became involved with this, with the Full Access conference, stems from John Howell is one of our regulars at the Kentuckiana Developers Group, and he had seen and experienced the work I had done for that. And he and I became friends at Pause on Error the last several years. And so he reached out to me when he started coming up with the idea, and he and Mike got together to put together Full Access. And he asked me if I would be interested in developing a registration system for the Full Access conference. And I definitely was interested, and I said yes. And so it's been an ongoing work in progress since then. But what we've done is we've integrated with a backend website, backend database, that this is our actual Full Access database that manages literally every aspect of the conference, from our profile of the conference itself, the event, the ability to send batch emails, the products that we have available, which are registrations and our shirts and hoodies that are available. We're tracking our registrations. This is my development version of the database, just to kind of caveat that as well, so that this data may not reflect the current data in the Full Access website, but it's where it's my development data set that I'm still working with there. We also have the ability to manage our presentations and our schedule. So all that is contained within our FileMaker database, and it's all being pulled and accessed from the website. So currently we can go to attending and show a list of all the people that are attending, and this is pulling their attendee profiles all from the FileMaker database. And we've got lots of lovely people attending so far, with hopefully more to come. And then our schedule is currently a work in progress. I can, if I have time, and at the end here, I'll show you where we're at with that so far. But this is just essentially a hard-coded temporary schedule until we get it pulling from the database. Our facts page, this is all being pulled from the database as well. So for instance, over here, we have under profiles, documents, and we have our list of facts. And so all of these are being pulled directly into the website and displayed from there. Our contact page, which when you submit a contact form, it goes directly into the FileMaker database, and we've got integrations like Slack that notify John or myself that somebody has submitted a contact form. And then we go to the registration form. If you're a new registration, this is how it shows up. And we've even got integration with Stripe payment processing, which again is all contained within a CWP Snippets plugin snippet. What I'm currently working on, which is our management of the schedule and the sessions. So this will be available on the live site coming soon. Again, please don't pay too much attention to the styling. I want to send a shout out to Patrick Reagan, who has been chipping in and doing a lot of the CSS styling work because I'm not that great at it. So I've been doing all the structure and he's been doing the styling, and I haven't turned this page over to him yet to make it pretty. So this is just a work in progress in the structure. But you have the ability to search the sessions. Uh, and I'm working on a filtering process. And if you're logged in, you actually will have the ability to mark favorites so that you can build your own schedule when the time comes. And as we get closer to the event, I can change that into a schedule view. So when it's in schedule view, you'll actually have a list of the time slots and all of the sessions and where they fall into the time slot. And that'll be filtered by, you can select which day you want to view. Again, all a work in progress, still not available yet. And again, the styling is nowhere near what the finished result will be. But so all of this is being done within snippets, where the PHP coding is injected into WordPress. Started to say earlier, the bad news is it's not going to do all this work for you because it's not a plug and play, drag and drop kind of scenario. It's a custom web publishing environment. But the good news is that AI is amazing for doing this work. So a few years ago, when I was first starting to look into integrations, I had an extremely limited knowledge of PHP and CSS and frameworks and coding environments and all that kind of stuff. And so this whole thing was kind of put together in mind of the fact that, most FileMaker developers are not web developers. I am a FileMaker developer. I am not a web developer. As a FileMaker developer, I wanted to be able to do web integrations without having to become a full-time web developer. The beauty of AI is that I do not have to become a full-time web developer in order to achieve all this stuff. It does take a little bit of getting used to working with AI and knowing how to ask the questions and how to give the prompts. But sometimes it could be as easy as saying, here's the data that I'm pulling from a FileMaker environment, and I'd like to format it in a list of contacts. And AI can spit out all of the code necessary to be able to present something like this. So we're actually very fortunate to be in this particular time frame when we have access to AI to do all that kind of stuff. So
I have a question for you, Ron. This is Mike
okay.
Ross. Uh, what was involved in making the plugin itself? What technologies do you need to be adept in?
Well, again, it really comes down to AI is a wonderful thing because the development of the plugin itself was done with an enormous amount of help from AI. But developing a plugin is just simply a plugin is built in PHP and JavaScript and all of that coding language. It's just a specifically formatted and built to integrate with the WordPress environment and basically write a plugin as a bunch of PHP files. And it starts with writing the file that injects the menu item over to the left and the different menu items and things like that. So it's nothing more than just being able to write some code in PHP and you can develop a plugin. So caching is a very good subject to talk about. FileMaker does integrations with FileMaker. The data API does not like caching. So that was a hurdle that I kind of had to get over some time ago, is understanding that it's very difficult to utilize caching with pages that are integrated with FileMaker, because although when you're caching pages in a WordPress environment, the WordPress environment, when it's integrated with the WordPress database, can basically tell the environment that, hey, there's new data to be found here. And so that's where the caching is managed in WordPress, is that there's a way for WordPress to kind of be notified or know that there's new data and that the page needs to be updated. We do not have that luxury when we're integrating with FileMaker, because there is no way for the WordPress website to know when the data has been changed in FileMaker. So one of the things that I've had to do is be very strategic about page caching, and especially using page caching plugins like JetSpeed is one that I use. And JetSpeed and plugins like that do have the ability to kind of pick and choose what pages you want to cache and how you want to manage that caching. So it is something that has to be managed pretty carefully. If you've got data that's changing very regularly in the FileMaker database, then usually I've found that the best case scenario is to not cache that page. If you've got some data, for instance, the might be, when we get to a point when the conference itself, when the schedule's all kind of completed and set, we may not need to, we may be able to cache that because it's unlikely to change. So we may be able to use some caching to make the presentation of the schedule a little bit faster with the use of caching. But caching is definitely something that needs to be managed carefully. And it's also a frustration point if you're not aware of how caching affects things. It took a lot of trial and error and a lot of realizing that my pages weren't updating when the FileMaker data was updating before I, realized that I had to get into understanding the caching and how it works. So when I'm caching, I'm usually using a separate plugin. During development, I usually add the caching plugin as a final step when developing an integration, just so I can kind of not run into problems where I'm thinking there's an error in the coding and I'm not getting updated data. And then I come to find out later on, oh, I forgot about caching. So I usually will add it in afterwards and then spend some time tailoring the caching to try and manage that situation. So there are lots of ways to be able to actually take the data from FileMaker and utilize the WordPress database as well. One of the things that I considered when I was developing a like an attendee login system. So for instance, on our website here for full access, when you go to my account, this website is not using any of the WordPress user account management at all. This is simply using account management that has been built into the FileMaker database. So one of the ways that I looked at to kind of manage the ability for people to log into the website was kind of synchronizing with the WordPress user database. And but in the end, it was just kind of unnecessary, because if I'm managing the data in one place, I'd rather not manage it in two places. So, and that really kind of brings about one of the reasons why I dove into developing this, is because a lot of the integrations that I did early on use things like webhooks and WooCommerce. So for instance, if somebody would place an order in WooCommerce, I would utilize a webhook to send that data to FileMaker. But now I've got the data in two places. And then I found that I was doing an enormous amount of work trying to synchronize the two, so that if it was changed in the WooCommerce database, that it would update in the FileMaker database. Or if it was changed in the FileMaker database, it was a much more difficult prospect to try and update the data in the WordPress database going the other way, because we can pretty easily manage the data in FileMaker from WordPress by using a WordPress a plugin, or not a plugin, a webhook in WordPress to send the data to FileMaker. But sending the data back from FileMaker to WordPress and having WordPress then interact with like WooCommerce, or one of the plugins that I worked with a lot for conferences was a plugin called Event Tickets Plus, and trying to manage and synchronize the data between those plugins and the FileMaker database was a whole lot of extra work. And so I started putting more of my effort into bypassing the WordPress database altogether and utilizing, the data managed in FileMaker as much completely as possible, so that I wasn't having to synchronize data. And most of my integrations, the situation was, a tool like WooCommerce was being used to capture the order, and then it was being sent to the FileMaker database, and the client was managing the rest of the order going forward from the FileMaker database. So essentially, the shopping cart was just a place to capture the order initially. And so it was like, okay, it seemed like a kind of a waste to be capturing orders in one system only to send them to another system and just disregard the first system. So a lot of that stuff is what came into consideration when I decided that I was going to really focus on direct integration with FileMaker and not having to rely on other third-party plugins, not having to rely on the WordPress database and working in that. I know my experience with the WordPress database is I find it maddening because as a FileMaker developer, I try and work in strict structuring of normalization and things like that, and table structure that all makes sense, and is relatively human readable. I found the WordPress database does not make any sense to me whatsoever. The way it's structured, the way that the relationships are done, and all of that kind of stuff just was really confusing. So I'm much more comfortable working with managing data in FileMaker. So I'd rather just do it all in FileMaker. But again, in answer to the question, with the plugin and the custom coding, you pretty much have the ability to do any kind of interaction and utilization of the WordPress database. So all things are possible is really the answer.
There's a comment in chat about a limit with CWP Snippets about scaling. So if there were thousands of calls, it's dependent on the live FileMaker database being available and being able to serve the info to WordPress site. What's your
And
take on
that is essentially my answer to that is it's kind of yet to be seen. The full access website itself is going to be a test case for that, because we'll have 100 attendees hitting the website all day long, managing their schedule and looking up the next session and things like that. I'm pretty confident that FileMaker can handle that kind of traffic. Scaling up to thousands, I'm I'm not an expert on performance in that respect, so a lot of it is kind of yet to be determined. I can't answer with any personal experience as to scaling up to those kind of numbers, because I haven't had a use case that is needed to scale up that big yet. So yeah, I think as with all things, it's always the right tool for the right application. And it may be that FileMaker and this type of integration wouldn't be great for something that's, got thousands of visitors a day. I don't know yet. But if it's not the right tool for that application, there are certainly plenty of applications where it's a great tool. When, like I said, a lot of my clients are small business, medium business. Their website traffic is not huge because they're not really relying on a lot of e-commerce. It's just another way to be able to make their data available to their clients. I think one of the things too that uh, is a nice use case, which in most cases wouldn't be a huge high traffic volume, would be a client portal. I think that's one of the things that has come to be expected of most companies. That think about all of the different companies that we interact with every day, and there's very few that don't have a website where you can sign into a client portal to update your account or make changes or make payments or things like that. So that's, I think a really good use case for something like this. So that's my honest answer is I honestly don't know how well it'll scale. It's yet to be determined for me. So, and that's really just, it's kind of outside of the purview of it, regardless of whether we're using this plugin or not, integration with the data API, that's where the question comes into play is how much can the data API handle? So absolutely. And it may be something where, the host company that we host with has the ability to flush the cache for the website so that if we cache it and then we make a change and we might want to make sure that it gets pushed out, we may need to take the extra step. And most of the plugins, caching plugins have that similar functionality. So, if might be a situation where we've made some changes to the facts and now we go flush the cache to make sure that the users get fresh data. But it is something that does have to be paid attention to. I'm hoping definitely the target date is to have it available in time for the full access conference in October. That being said, I'm making every effort to make it available before then. But I'm kind of a one-man shop. As a matter of fact, I just took on a junior developer that's now working with me. So I'm on the adventure of being a FileMaker developer that's starting to grow my business and take on more work and actually just got to the point where it was time to bring on another developer. So I'm pretty busy at the moment is what I'm getting to. So I'm trying to find whatever time I can to keep moving this forward. And hopefully, and that being said, one of the things too that is going to take some time, the plugin itself, the licensed version, the license managing itself is being done by FileMaker. So when it becomes available to license, the whole process of purchasing the license and getting your key and activating the license is all going to be managed with a back-end FileMaker database that manages the license system. So rather than using a different third-party plugin, which there are plugins available for managing licensing, rather than doing that, it's kind of, I'm like I said, I'm such a advocate for eating our own dog food, and so my drive is to, can it be done in FileMaker? Can I do this with FileMaker? And so far the answer is yes. And so the whole licensing system is in development as well, but it's being developed using a FileMaker backend. So when the time comes that you'll be able to come over to CWP Snippets and purchase your license, all of everything that you'll be doing in this website to purchase your license, it'll have a back-end client portal for being able to manage your license and all of that stuff. It's all going to be managed on the back end with a FileMaker database. So I'm looking at roughly $10 a month for per site. If you're buying like one site, and then of course there'll be price breaks. I haven't settled in on the exact pricing yet, but so essentially, starting somewhere around $99 a year, and then price breaks for blocks of licenses, 5, 10, 20, however many site licenses that you license. So keep in mind, there's a lot of functionality and features that are coming very soon, hopefully. So what you've downloaded is just kind of a bare bones version that gives you the ability to at least play around and see, get comfortable in the environment and everything. But I imagined that it was a use case that a lot of other FileMaker developers have run into. When I first started doing data API integrations and integrations with websites, or at least I couldn't find hardly any videos or articles or hardly anything that addressed integration with WordPress. So a lot of the stuff that was out there Michael Lane, who I have great respect for, and I learned a lot from him. He had a great presentation, but the whole presentation was in a website, built in Bootstrap, and it was, he was a web developer coming at it from the approach of a web developer, showing how to do integration with FileMaker as opposed to a FileMaker developer trying to do integration with a website. But in general, I found very little out there. I had seen, even in the past few years, I had seen some FileMaker plugins or WordPress plugins kind of come and go that were meant for integration with FileMaker. Maybe one or two that I'd even seen when I'd looked up on the repository, but now they're not there anymore. So they haven't been supported and kept up with. This plugin is not available on the repository yet, and that's going to be a whole nother kind of step in the process. WordPress has honestly gotten quite, I don't want to say difficult, but it's a process to be able to get a plugin approved for their repository. So I'm not quite there yet with tackling that hurdle, but it will be available through my own website first, and all of that. And then later on, we're going to start working on trying to get it approved for the repository. But so what I was saying was, it seemed like there was very little discussion about how do you integrate with a WordPress website. And maybe those discussions were out there, but I wasn't finding them. And so I always thought to myself, there have got to be other developers out there that are being approached by clients that have a WordPress website, and how is everybody else doing these integrations? And I did find that a number of them are writing their own custom plugins, but they're not written for distribution and not made available to the public. They're just their own in-house custom plugins that are written to manage their specific application and their specific use case. So, so I found that I know there's a number of people out there doing that. There are a couple of other, I can't remember the name of one that does have some WordPress plugins available, I believe, to the public, but I don't know that they have free versions or are, really pushing readily distributing them as much as they're kind of putting it as something they have in their wheelhouse for use with their clients. So, so yeah, so I felt like, the more I started putting together this tool for my own use, the more I felt like there have got to be other FileMaker developers out there that would benefit from this tool. And of course, like all things with us and developing, and we put something like this out, my hope is that it'll generate some business for me as well, and that people will maybe find that they want to hire out the coding for the snippets and stuff, and I'll be available for that. So, that's what we do, right? We put out some free stuff and hope that somebody ends up asking us to do some development for them. So, so hopefully that works out for me as well.
We are planning to do at the Full Access Conference kind of an introduction to WordPress for FileMaker developers, and not a presentation Ron will be putting on, but to be a complimentary presentation, maybe one, perhaps two. So if you're interested in that particular world, we're going to try to make that available for you. We're still firming up plans for that, but that seems to be there seems to be quite a bit of interest. But my question, kind of once again, not knowing much about the WordPress world, what I hear is that WordPress and all its little extensions are being updated all the time.
Yeah.
Does that cause issues with your plugin needing to be updated?
It is one of the things that developing plugins I've had to do a lot of research in, and a lot of pay a lot of attention to, making sure that our coding is not interfering or with other plugins. So it's something that definitely has to be attended to and paid attention to. But of course, on our end, I'm putting a lot of efforts into making sure that the plugin development itself is following along with all of the WordPress standards and guidelines and everything to be able to develop plugins that can interact and live happily with all the other plugins that are out there. That being said, probably everybody that has worked in WordPress at some time or another has may come across plugin conflicts that do happen. So hopefully we can mitigate that as much as possible. One of the things that this CWP Snippets is built on with the FMCWP class that was developed, the token management. Rewinding, going back to when I first started integrating, I was using, PHP classes that were available like FM Restore, most of which used sessions to manage the tokens. And a PHP session is I don't know if I have the technical know-how to be able to explain what a session is if you don't understand what a session is. But it's a way of maintaining data from page load to page load. So every time you refresh a page, a session is persistent as you navigate throughout a site. So you can store data in a session, and as you go page to page, that data is available until you like close the browser, for instance. Well, and that's one of the challenges of developing in websites is that every time you reload the page, unless you have a mechanism for making data available, it's basically clearing the slate every time you hit refresh. So there are mechanisms that need to be used if you need persistent data, like sessions, like the WordPress database. So that information and that data is available when you go to the next page and the next page. It's the kind of stuff that's used to maintain your logged in state. So when you log into a WordPress website, for instance, with your username and password, when you navigate around that site, there has to be a way that that site knows that you're logged in as you navigate from page to page. Sessions is a way to do that, but within FileMaker, sessions are kind of a non-starter. Like you can use, like when I was doing my early integrations, I was using sessions, but it was flagging errors in WordPress. It wasn't causing anything to crash, but if you went to the WordPress tools, it would show you that there was an error message saying, we've noticed the use of sessions and this could cause problems and blah, blah, blah. So I had to find another method for managing those tokens. Now, FM Restore is very nice. And again, that's with 24U. So if you're not working in a WordPress environment and you're looking for a FileMaker class, a PHP class to work with for data API integrations, I highly recommend FM Restore. They had built into it using file management with the tokens. So in other words, when you went to the website and you connected to the FileMaker database, that token was being stored in a tiny little text file within the hosted web files. And then as you did your interaction, the PHP would refer to that text file to see if you had an active token. And that's initially how I started with this plugin, was using file management. Eventually, I just realized that, I could use the WordPress database. So when you log into a FileMaker database with CWP Snippets installed, when you log into the database, it's grabbing that token and it's saving it to a transient variable to the WordPress database. So the token management itself is being accomplished using the WordPress database to store that token and refer to it each time you reload the page to maintain that open connection. And so, yeah, this is developed like any other WordPress plugin. It will be maintained and updated, and all, the plugin will be able to be updated as it goes through versions and stuff right here from the plugin management. So the interactions with other plugins, and we are paying as much attention as we possibly can to developing the plugin so that it lives happily and harmoniously with all the other plugins in WordPress. So.